I'm sitting there, and I was sitting in bed one night with my eyes closed, and all of a sudden there was this face right up against my nose, and my eyes were closed and I could see this face, and it was his. And then I opened my eyes and I'm still seeing it, and it was there in front of me, and he was grinning and laughing. Now that was wow, that was very powerful. And I was probably around my early 20s then.
Welcome back to the Practitioner Spotlight with Spirit Release Academy. Today we have Robert Honey with us. He is a fantastic medium out of the UK. Welcome, Robert.
I'm going to say good afternoon to you. Is it not quite there for you, or good morning?
We're still in the morning. We're almost afternoon, but not
Good
quite.
morning to you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
good to be
All
here.
right. So we want to learn a little bit about you. How did you come to spirituality? What's your background?
Well, I'm a natural spiritual medium. I was born this way. And so I suppose living in a household which was not a spiritual household was quite tough as you grow up because nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew how it was around you. It seemed quite natural to me. And I can remember being told off for talking to people at night when I was in bed and singing and those sorts of things. And you don't really understand. And I always knew that there was something different. And I suppose it wasn't until I got to senior school that I can remember somebody in the class that I was in actually lost her mother. And there were rumours and stories about her going to seances. So I think little light bulbs started pinging around in my head, but it didn't really mean a lot to me. And it wasn't until um, at some stage I can remember being asked if because I come from a Catholic background, did I want to be confirmed? And I said, no, I'm an agnostic, which didn't go down very well, as you can probably appreciate.
Yes.
And then gradually, I became more aware of my ability. I knew there was something different about me, couldn't put a finger on it, didn't know what it was, didn't understand because I didn't have the background or the people around me. And I was talking to a friend's mum one day, and she said to me, "Oh, you need to go to the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain up at Sloane Square and have a reading. Go and see a medium." I thought, all right. So I went and saw a medium, and I suppose, and she pointed me in the way to a particular spiritualist church which was local to me. Um, and I felt much more comfortable with things and life, I think. And then gradually it just grew from there. Everything that had been latent within me was starting to pop up. I realized that but when I stepped back and looked at my life, I could say I can pinpoint different things. I can pinpoint having inspiration, thoughts about things and it happening, and seeing different things and it happening, and understanding different things. And it wasn't until I suppose I started sitting in open circle in spiritualist church, and I met a lady who unfortunately is no longer with us now, but she became our mentor, and she was in her 60s at the time. So she came from an old spiritualist background as well. And it's just gone from there. And I started sitting, and the rest is history, if you like. I'm very blessed to be a trance medium, and I've been practicing for over 40 years. Um, but I also have clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient abilities, and lots of other aspects of mediumship, which have been honed over many, many years, working on platforms, demonstrating trance publicly, in invited groups, and different things like that. So it's been a long journey. As I said, I've been practicing for over 40 years. So it's there. It's part of me. It's part of my
Nice.
DNA. It's never been anything different. And it's not until now, I suppose, as I've got older, we've had children, my wife and I, how it works and how we've been and where we've been. And I always sit and listen to people and they say things, oh, yes, I want to do this. I want to be a medium. I want to do that. And I sit there and I think, do you really? Do you really realize when you start doing this and you actually take it seriously and you decide to step over this threshold, how much responsibility comes with it? And I think that's the frightening thing. And I think some people say yes and yes and yes to everything and step over the threshold in naivety, in extreme naivety.
Looks
Then they
glamorous on the outside, doesn't it? So it draws people
absolutely.
in.
And then it also feels that they are, I think people become to start believing their own publicity, people around them, because when they show some ability, people start saying, oh, how good you are, how this, how that. Yeah, it's great. But there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it, and you have to hone it. You have to hone
Definitely.
the ability and to turn around and say to somebody, I can always know when I'm doing development circles or thing, you say to people, give what you give, not what you think, because people have this real talent to embellish what you may be seeing, whether it be
Yeah,
clairvoyant, and they sort of pumping it in.
true.
They're seeing one thing and they think, oh, that looks good. Oh, let me put it in this way. But that wasn't the box that it came in, if you understand what I mean. They
Hmm.
make it far more embellished, far more. And you think, well, hang on a minute. This is natural stuff you're doing. Why make it something that's not? It's the same way as communicating, like we're doing. You give it as you get it. You're honest with it. I have a deal with the spirit people, as you know, on the discussions we've had before, that I only deal with indisputable truths. Because if they don't do that, and I don't do that, there's no point in us doing it. Because a medium's main task is survival, to prove survival, to prove longevity, to prove that we are eternal beings, if you would wish.
Yes.
And I always say to people, I can't give you auntie this, uncle that, but I can guarantee giving you what you need. And I think that also throws people because they sit there and they think, oh, really? Do I need that? And I say to people, if I'm working clairvoyantly, I don't know what I'm talking about, which is great. And the spirit people, when I finish, always take it away. And the same way with my trance mediumship. I don't know what is being said. I'm not present there. I might be inside the body listening to a voice talking, but it means nothing to me.
Robert has left the building.
Yeah, well, not as much as Elvis, but there you go. I have to a point, yes. It's sort of they repress it and they control it, which is then it becomes clear and honest and true. So
It's
it's
beautiful.
very much it's very much a hard pathway if you're going to choose it. And I think because I suppose, come from an what I would term an old spiritualist background, you're taught in a certain way, or you're shown things in a certain way. And you also, as somebody said to me one day, one of the guides said to me, you will see the good and the bad. And as my dear wife says, the ugly as well. And you do. You see those mediumistic people, or those people that are what they say they are, but you can see they're not quite what they are, or they're not quite engaged, or they're not quite pure as a vessel. You know,
Yeah,
my being me, being what I do, is I have to be the best vessel I possibly can be for the spirit people to work. All I am here is to serve. And I've come a long way, and this is what I do.
nice. You mentioned development circles, so you've had a lot of experience with different types of mediumship, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the different types are? A lot of people don't really realize the different ways that spirit can communicate.
The thing is, there is clairvoyance and clairaudience. So clairvoyance is where you're actually seeing something, but there's two different levels of that. It's either subjective or objective. So if it's subjective, it's like we're looking at each other now, whereas sorry, objective is what she's looking at us now, but subjective is it's coming in here. And it's the spirit people have to learn how to communicate with you, how to teach you what they want to show you, but also how you can comprehend it, because we all sit and look and see things in different ways. Clairaudience can be, you can hear a voice out here or you can hear it in here. So it's very much, you've got things like um, spiritual healing or healing wise, where you are the channel for the healing energies to go through, which is sort of what we do with this SRA, if you like. You are a healing channel. You're being classed and used to do that. You have a ports, which is more like a physical mediumship. You have physical mediumship, which is where people, you can get um, manifestations where a medium will be in trance for a long time, very deep trance, and they'll use the ectoplasm to actually let the spirit people manifest with the energy, and they'll talk to the people in the group, in the sitters. You get a direct voice, which is where they use the voice box, but you'll hear the voice come from somewhere up here, not actually through trance, but it's direct, it's
Wow.
somewhere else. So there's lots of different aspects of it. And in circles over the years, you can sit in them and it's like going into a time machine. You can be there for 2 hours and you'll feel that you've only been in there for half an hour. Because when you go into the circle room, it's a completely different energy. It's as though time has elapsed. There is no time. They put you in the spirit world, if you like. It's like being in the spirit world. And for goodness sake, they always agree. They have no concept of time.
Yeah,
They have no
noticed that.
concept of time, of how it
Yeah.
works. So there's lots of various types of mediumship, lots of various aspects of it. But it all gets given a bad name sometimes by those people that don't do the thing or prey on people. I think people come are brought to me when they need to be brought to me. That's what I think. And the same way as the SRA work. For years, I I suppose I've always done things, but one thing that's always sat in the back there is years and years ago during the war, they used to have rescue circles where where soldiers would pass and they would help them transition. But it was done through a medium who was very strong. They used to have groups, they used to be dedicated, a bit like what we do now with the SRA, but slightly different. And they used to work with it. But the rescue circles were right for then because people's knowledge was right then. They didn't have the expanse of understanding that we have now. Spirit people are always saying it's all evolving, it's always growing, it's all developing. But you find that those rescue circles were what we do now, if you like. But they were they weren't as honed, they weren't as refined. The spirit
Yeah.
people were learning as well. They were getting technology, they were understanding how to use it, they were understanding how to use the mediums because the mediums were restricted as well. Some of them, although they were extraordinary mediums, weren't as developed. Their physical bodies were only able to take certain aspects of energy. And you'd find mediums that would go into houses where they were theoretically haunted or people were trapped there and they would help them. But as people and other people you'll know would turn around, they'd been grabbed by people. But that's a different time. It's not the same now. Because we do what we do remotely, it's far more safer. So I've always had those sorts of things, rescue circles on the back, and I just thought
Yeah.
over the years, I really do hope I don't get down that route. I really do hope that I don't do that. And conversations my dear wife and other sitters have had with my guides, things pointed that way, but you just sat there and you think, no. And it wasn't until I suppose Jono's wife Louise, who I've known for well over 20 years, knew her before she met Jono. She used to sit in a circle we had. And it wasn't until she mentioned it to my wife and we talked, and my wife was saying, "Oh, yeah, Louise says you should do this, you should do that." And and I said, "No, no, 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 no." But you have to get to a point in your life where you decide to do it. And then we were always trying to get together to have something to eat. Louise, my wife, Suzanne, and Jono and I, but we never managed to do it. But we managed to do it one summer day. And we were sitting talking, and we were having a very honest conversation. And Jono said, "It's really nice to talk to people who don't mind." And we went away. And believe it or not, I actually saw an advert on Instagram which said about the spirit release, the 8 day, 8 week course, and it turned around and said, "Good mediums needed." I thought, right, okay, you're telling me something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The guides were
So
conspiring behind your back to
that's
get you
right.
there.
So I spoke to Jono and asked him and started talking to him. I was driving home one night actually because he was trying to get him to schedule to talk to me and me to schedule. I was driving home one night, and one of the first questions I asked him is, I said, "How do I know that I can trust the facilitators?" And he said, "That's a good question. You can't." Now, that was an interesting concept for me as well, because I'd had someone who'd been around me for 38 years looking after me when I'm off in trance, and on the this side, if you like, keeping an eye on me. Yes, they were in the same room, but they were keeping an eye on me. So it was an interesting thing for me to suddenly realize, okay, I'm going to have to put my faith in somebody else here somewhere on the line. And as you can
Yeah.
appreciate, to me, this is very important. To me, I have to look after myself because as a trance medium, if somebody, when you're in trance, goes to touch you, it messes the energy up and you can be very ill. And somebody did that to me once, right the way at the beginning of my development, and I was very ill for quite a while after it. And I
Oh,
felt inside because the energy. And I have a doorkeeper guy who is a very powerful Egyptian lady who is very, very strong willed and very strong minded. And she said, that will never happen again. And if it does, I will physically stop them. And apparently she has. So I, when I'm off, I
interesting.
don't know, but
Interesting. Yeah, that was an excellent question because, you know, we're very adamant that the facilitators are up to a certain standard. So, what was that like when you first worked with a facilitator in class?
well, it's what's really interesting is when I first went on the first date was the 13th of February 24, and I went on to the online course. And I'm sitting there and all these faces are popping up and John is saying hi to everybody and things like that. And Andy was. And I'd never met Andy before. So this first time I met Andy was online. And I've got my main guy sitting there saying to me, "You'll work with that one, you'll work with that one, you'll work with that one, you'll work with that one." And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, go on. Um, and you take that sort of approach because what you see is what you get with me. It's very down to earth. It's very balanced. And it was interesting because when we went down there and Jono said, right, next week, guys, you're going to do the old, you're going to be doing a clearing because we've been very blessed to watch Dave work with Ruth facilitating. And it was a pleasure to watch good mediumship because you sit there and think, wow,
Yes,
that's really
Dave's
good to do.
great. Yes.
We had a lot of facilitators in our group. So I think the mediums, there was only three mediums training when I did, myself and two other people. And so Dave and Ruth came in and worked as well. So it was interesting because the first person I worked with, um, we got put into a room and it was Miriam, and Miriam sat down and goes, "I knew I was going to get you." And I said, "Right, okay."
Nice.
Um, and you have to just put a little bit of faith and trust. And she was one of the ones that the guide had pointed out as well. Were working at the time, but were listening to the what was going on site. So they were observing. And at the end, one of the observers said, "Wow, you guys are like professionals." Now, the main guide that I've got, you've worked with, so you
Mhm.
know what he's like. He does
Yes.
like to chat, we know that, but he also wishes to help and teach at the same time. And he always will work with it. And they were all very pleased with it. And then I think the next week I worked with Kamara, who you had on previously, and we worked together. And since then, all the facilitators he said I'd worked with, I have done. And I've worked with them all separately
That's
as well
great.
after the training. Yes, you do tend to find you funnel in with some a little bit more than others. And it doesn't really help. I suppose time zones are quite a thing as well. Um, I'm based in the UK. Um, it's gone 5 o'clock in the afternoon here in the UK at the moment, and I think you're going on sort of between 11 and 12 in the after.
Yeah.
So
It's a bit of
to
a
fundamentally,
stretch in between, yeah.
it's time zones that you work with, which is it is what it is. You just have to do that. But I've been doing this now from the training started about 15, 16 months. So, and
Yeah.
I I got I think I was the second one in our group to get certified. So because I wanted to get it done, I wanted to do it.
That's good.
And
We want to
yeah,
get
you
you guys
do.
working as soon as possible, so that's excellent to do it.
And I'm very lucky that the Lumile, the group that I trained with, are all very good at what they do. And they all seem to be settling down, some more than others. And you also was going to get anybody in a group which don't go as far as they would want to. But it's really great. I love, and I'm more than happy to work with any of them. I'm more than happy to talk to any of them. I get a lot of messages on the Telegram. We're talking, lots of conversations go on, and I'm always prepared to do it as long as I can physically have the time to do it because it's important and you have to get it right. So the training was good. The training was interesting. Um, it was obviously, I think, apart from Jono and Andy, I was probably the longest serving medium that all bit who'd been practicing. I
Yeah,
think I've been practicing longer than both of they have, if you like, as well. But that's not anything wrong. It's just purely the way life has taught me and it's gone. So it's really, really interesting to see people's concepts, to understand what people's views are, and sometimes how they're misinformed about how things work. And I found myself sometimes explaining how things work, explaining where I come from, explaining how things should be, how I see things should be. But it's all quite aligned. During some of the conversations we've had separately on other occasions, you and I, you understand where it comes from, I'm very passionate about this. It's very important to me. And it sometimes worries me how people sometimes very naively and glibly get involved in this and think that they can do things. As you said, it seems glamorous. It seems
yeah,
it's a dedication. And I think a lot of
definitely.
mediums these days don't do what I would call an apprenticeship. Don't do the time, don't go through the process of developing, don't have the same connection with their guides that they should have. And it is like a working relationship. It's like a marriage, if you like. It's like a love. You have to have that respect for each other. It's like
Definitely.
anything. Sometimes you all fall out, but that's the way it is. But I know inside me in here, it's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. So
Yeah,
I find it interesting watching people. I find it very fascinating to listen to what people say. And it's when you sit in groups and people say, "Oh, I want to be like you." You don't want to be like me. You want to be like yourself.
exactly.
It's all very good having respect and admiration for somebody, but we are all unique vessels. We are all different completely, and we function in a completely different way. And everybody's mediumship, who are mediums, genuine mediums, function in a different way. Nothing is bespoke. It's all bespoke for you. Nothing is exactly the same for everybody because we all have our life. We stepped on this journey, made the choices we have. So that's how we grow. And I think some people think, oh, yeah, well, I know they say to me sometimes, yeah, but I want to go and do that. I said, do you? They said, yeah. Well, I said, let me tell you this. You'll go round and round and round and round to get to that. Well, why would I do that? Why wouldn't I? Because you have to experience, you have to gain knowledge, you have to gain understanding. You have to become fairly well read as well, because it's quite important to understand the mechanics of things. And not all the books explain the mechanics properly. But to turn around and say, when you do get there where you want to go, you'll probably get there and think, well, actually, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go over there.
Yeah.
And what you,
Everybody's path is meant for something different, right?
that's right.
For their
And
own unique.
what you feel you want to do, I find that quite entertaining because um, the guides will sit there and find it quite entertaining as well. Because what you think you want to do and what you will actually do as you grow and you evolve are two different things. Because they see without any restriction what your abilities are. And sometimes some people's abilities come in, and as they move on, they recede a little bit, but they still stay there. So it's like a stepping stone onto the next part of development, next part of growth, next part of expansion. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, we're on a continual pathway of growth.
Yeah. It's interesting to see. We do have so many people from different walks of life, different abilities, different experiences, and different levels of experience. And some of our mediums will start as facilitators until they've, developed that more. So it is interesting to see the spectrum, but there always has to be that trust between the medium and the facilitator. So I'm
Mm.
glad you touched on that part that you felt that you were able to trust the facilitators that you
Yeah.
worked with.
One of um, the main facilitators I work with now, one of them being my wife, I trust
Yes.
implicitly. I trust implicitly.
Yeah.
So, um, but I wouldn't do that if I didn't. So you sense who you would work with, and you sense who you won't, and you feel things, and you know. But fundamentally, my view is I'll work with anybody unless they turn around and say to me, no. But
Yeah.
if they say no, there's a reason for it.
It's kind
And
of like any relationship, really. You gravitate
absolutely.
to different people that you jive with and have the energy that melds together good. That's why it's good that we have so many to choose from. You don't have to work with every single person. You find the ones that are your match.
No, I know when I was training, and I know even after that, I know there's a couple of messages came up saying, "Can anybody help this facilitator do some case studies? Can they do that?" And I said, more than happy to do it because we all have to learn, and I'm still more than happy to do it because we still have to learn. And but what I would say, unless you've seen, I think what it is I know there are mental mediums that do this. And I
Mhm.
find that quite interesting how they do it and they don't colour what's going on and they don't have that influence because they have the consciousness or the unconscious mind subdued, if you like, and to be all this to be clear you have to be very good at what you do. Whereas some of the trance mediums who are saying that this is what they do also struggle because they don't totally have that relationship with the guides to do this work. And it's to have that implicit trust. And as you say, it's a working relationship, not just between you and the facilitator, but between those that are up there um, and those that look after it. And it's look after us, and we're very blessed, I think.
Definitely. I'm curious. So sometimes people come in to the spirit release work with the guide that they've always worked with. And sometimes a new guide will come forward and step forward, maybe that's been in their group that just wasn't prominent, or maybe even a new one for the work. I'm curious to know, is the guide that you're working with for this work, have they always been with you, or was this something
He's always been with
specific?
me.
Okay.
You know, he's an American, Native American Indian known as Two Moons. Well, that's how he introduces himself and talks to people. He is. about 6'7". That's before he's got his headdress on, because where I've demonstrated in places where he stood me up, people have seen his headdress touching the ceiling of a room, and
Oh, he's tall.
he's got hands like excavator buckets as well. So
Big
my
energy.
whole, I'm just under 6 foot. I'm fairly broad, but he is big. So his presence is very strong. But when I first started working, I had a different guide around me who worked. And in the circle one night, this guide turned around and told the group that he was leaving because he said he had done his work and he got me to as far as he could. As far as was his, and his journey was different now. So I think that through the circle a little bit, that we had at home. Um, but this guy Two Moons is very, 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 very not controlling. He's very calm. He's very placid. He is very communicative with me as well as them. But I think one of the things that really made me jump one day is before when I was living, I had a flat or an apartment, so the Americans will say, in locally, and I was living in it, and I bought it, and I'm sitting there, and I was sitting in bed one night with my eyes closed, and all of a sudden there was this face right up against my nose, and my eyes were closed, and I could see this face, and it was his, and then I opened my eyes, and I'm still seeing it, and it was there in front of me, and he was grinning and laughing. Now that was wow, that was very powerful. And I was probably around my early 20s then. So, and he's always been around and worked on a healing energy, but he now does, he's the main guide that speaks through me when we do the spirit release work. Now, I have other guides around me, and they all have different jobs. And yes, there is a couple more up around that do this work. And I'm told by the facilitators that sometimes they brought other people in, people of higher ascendancy, to do certain aspects of work through this because they feel that the energy is needed to be done and it needs to be cleared in a different way. And when you do this work, not just on people, but if you do properties and land, it's really quite fascinating how they do it, where they do it, how it happens. But there's also such great feedback that you get from things that people will tell you.
Yeah. So on that subject, are there any sessions? I know you're not present, but I'm sure you guys debrief after.
Oh,
Are there
do
any
yes.
sessions that really stand out that really wowed you?
Um, I think that it's a process really because when I did my case studies, a friend of mine who has an autistic son and her daughter, she got 3 children, but she wanted. I was talking to her about it, and she said, "Well, I'll be a case study." And she's a Reiki master, and she said, "You can do my son and my youngest daughter and me," because they've been through a very troubled time. Because the son was in his late teens, and he was a big lad, and he was a bit. His autism was very, very strong. It was quite. He not out of himself became a little bit physical with his mother, who's quite petite, if you like, and his sister was quite shell shocked with lots of. So there was a lot going on. So I said, okay, and I did the 3 as case studies, and it was really interesting because she was getting to a stage where he had to go to a residential home to live on his own, and since he's had a clearing and her daughter's had a clearing, she's had a clearing, they have he's never turned back. His initial clearing, the home where he was, he got up in the middle of the night and walked, and they found him about 2 o'clock in the morning. But he wasn't very far away from the home. They brought him back, but he's never been any different. He's never got worse. He's got better. He's living
Oh,
his
nice.
main life. To the fact that his mum made me laugh one day. She said, I went to see him. She said, and he couldn't get me out of the house quick enough when it was time for me to go. She said, he's literally pushing me out the door. So it works. It is good. We've done some house clearings. A friend of mine who had said to me one day when she knew what I did, she said, I've got to get the house cleared. And this was somebody who has got a very old 200-year-old house plus. She didn't live in it, but she rented it to people. And the backstory is that when she lived there with her daughter, she came down into the hall one day and she found all these papers all over the floor. She said, I've never dropped anything on the floor. Once she actually picked them up, they were old ancient leases and ownership records, scrolled sort of really. And she said, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "Well, that's what I would call an apport. So it's something that the spirit world have given you that comes out of nothing. It's been
Oh,
somewhere.
yeah, I've heard of that with
Big
coins and
then,
stuff dropping from the sky and
absolutely."
stuff. Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh wow!" And she brought them in to show me. She said, "What do you think?" And I didn't really want to touch them. And I said, "Yeah, no, no, I feel the energy." And then she suddenly said to me one day, "I've got to get the house cleared." I said, "All right." And we hadn't sort of been certified very long. I said, "Well, we can do it." And I said, "If that's what you want to do." And she said, "I need to," because she'd had two or three different people that had rented it who were saying about smells in the house, damp and all sorts of things, and electricity. She's going in, getting people checking it. Nothing wrong with the house whatsoever. There was a particular room in the house where the door had to be left open, but if it was closed, trouble was in the house. She said, "I don't really know what's going on." So I said, okay. I said, so we'll clear it. So I arranged with a facilitator to do the clearing, and it was the first house clearing, property and land clearing that we did. But we said, okay, let's go for it. Let's do it because every inanimate object has a higher self, and you can work with that. And if you get the
Oh, totally.
permission,
Yeah.
so we started clearing it. I think we were upwards of nearly an hour clearing this property. But when it came back, the facilitator told me that there was somebody that had been trapped there for 150 years, and it was a lady.
Oh, wow.
And she was nervous of the guide that I have because he's male. So they brought in some female guides to help and sit with her while they're doing clearing because she'd been trapped in that house because of a husband who was not particularly a nice person. And she used to hide from him in this room and things like that. And we actually found out through the clearing that she was a herbalist and she actually killed him
Oh,
by using something,
okay.
and nobody
Interesting.
was the wise. But through this clearing, we went right the way back to the beginning of the house before it was built, and they took it to when it was being built, and they went to different stages of this house through this 150, this 200 years plus, and it was being used for different things that weren't particularly nice, different ritual things and things like that over the years. And this was a beautiful thatch building, beautiful, what you would call an old English country home, really, and all the way back up to the present. So we cleared it all. And I sent this friend of mine a message saying, "Oh, the clearing was done last night." After it was done, she said, "Oh, great." Um, and we got the report, and I sent her the report. And she said, "Wow, I'm on my way to France." She was actually she's got a place in France, so she was driving down to France. She said, "Look at what I've just seen." And she sent me some photographs that she'd taken out of the car, and it was a rainbow, absolute massive big
Aw.
rainbow, massive big. And some of them look a bit like angel wings. The clouds look like angel wings. And she said, "I think the lady has passed over, has transitioned."
Oh, that's cool.
And that was fantastic. And when we and she said, "That's amazing." And she said, "I'll read the report and I'll come back to you." And she did. And she said, "Wow, I can't believe what it says." But the lady, when this friend of mine lived in the house with her daughter, the lady, she never had any problems because the lady was happy having females there. But as soon as a lady and a man were in
Okay.
the house, or a men were in, it kicked off because she didn't like the energy. It's that fear. Now,
Yeah.
what's even more interesting about this is facilitator I got said to me afterwards she got a bit drawn in and she had to step back a bit because she'd experienced some things which she understood, if you like, with this lady. And about a week or so later, week, 2 weeks later, facilitator said to me, "Oh, I've been on the Tuesday group." I said, "Oh, have you?" Because its time zone's completely different for me. It'd be 2 in the morning if I was doing it. And she said, "I had a gift." I said, "Did you?" And she said, "Yes." She said, one of the guys on there said to me that he got a lady with him and she got a rose. I said, "Right." And he said, "I had to give it the facilitator." And she said, "I
Oh,
wept." She said, and I said, "Well, you think of the evidence you just had there. This is a lady that was trapped in a property, couldn't pass over, didn't like the male guides, moved with female guides, but she came back and proved that she passed over and proved she transitioned to a man to give this rose to the facilitator."
oh, goosebumps. That's
It
so
is,
awesome.
but going on from that, the ladies whose home it was, her daughter and her partner moved into the house. But before she did, the ladies went back there and she said, "Oh, the house is so clean. It smells for it's completely different. Wow, this is really great. I am so pleased. I don't have any worries about selling it." Then her daughter and her partner moved in because they were trying to save for a house and it was easier for them to do that. And I had a video sent to me one day of things moving the TV and not allowing things to and changing things on the TV. But they got it in this room where this lady had been. And she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And then she said, looking at the report again, she said, "I think it's because of my daughter's partner. She wasn't too happy having the man in that room in the house." Now, the daughter who went to live there was the daughter who lived with the lady when she got given these reports, these papers. 3 or 4 months later after that, this lady's daughter was expecting. She had got real problems having children, and they were looking at IVF, different ways of doing it because of all the different problems that she had. And she's now got her granddaughter, the little one's here. So
Oh,
there is
nice.
a testimonial on my website on that page which says, I'm grateful for it because it has now breathed new life. So we cleared, it prepared the property for new life. So that is quite traumatic.
Yeah.
That's quite woof. And there's one of them that this is quite well, it's not amusing, but it's interesting because there was one clearing that a lady had booked for herself, her husband, and her daughter. Now, the lady and the family were in the States, and she said, "But my husband doesn't know anything about it. I'm not telling him." Later found out after we'd done the clearing that the husband was the one who was the biggest problem out of them all. We then got feedback saying from the lady saying, "Oh, thank you for the clearing. Really pleased with it. After my husband had his clearing that night, he was physically, violently projectile sick." Now, this gentleman had made, apparently from what they tell me through the clearing, he'd made certain agreements with organizations or people and had signed himself up to things. I was told with blood.
Oh,
So, but because we
yes.
cleared it, the only way he could release it
Had to purge it.
to purge it. Sometimes purging can happen through a family member, but this man went to bed, and apparently he's been no different since. He's been
Wow.
really. So
It's
one of the
incredible.
hardest things that I find doing this is you don't always get feedback.
This is true.
Yeah, when you do get feedback, you get it really good. I had some feedback on one, in fact, earlier today. I was asked to do clearing for a team which is certified who felt that they couldn't get through and do it. And they were having problems. So I said, well, okay, well, I'll do it. These are the two facilitators that you know quite well. Choose which one you would like to do it. And they told me. So I said, okay. Had a conversation with the facilitator, quite happy to do it. The gentleman had got really bad suicidal thoughts consistently, really bad, and he was not in a good space. And his partner was not very well and was very worried about him and things like that. The feedback I got was that he has now, since the clearing, he is in so much of a better place. She'd never seen him like that, and only a couple of times have thoughts of ending his life appeared. And she said, I've never seen him with a zest for life and happiness. Now, it's a bit more protracted, the feedback I got, but I'm not going to go verbatim because it's relatively private on the people. But you sit there and you look at it and you think, that is so humbling. That is powerful.
Definitely.
That is inspiring when you see. And I suppose my dear wife said to me one day, she said, when I started training doing this, she said, I haven't seen you this happy for years.
Oh,
She said, that's because you're helping people and your
making a
attitude to
difference. Yes,
tangibility is coming back and you're being shown it by people telling you. And some of it is quite powerful. Some of it is very humbling. Some of it brings you to emotional tears when you hear how much it has helped people. There was one client who identified as identified was man, but identified as a lady, and had been married and told his wife, and the lady cut him out, and he was suicidal. We cleared him, and he said thank you so much because you've saved my life. Now, when somebody's saying that to you, and I don't say it because I'm trying to give myself kudos, I'm saying it because if somebody's telling me that, then I will accept what they're saying to me. And I'm humbled
right.
completely. Because to me, as I said earlier on, I am purely a vessel to channel this. I'm the one that sits there in trance whilst they're talking and they're working and doing it. So that's great. If they can do that, and it can do that, and it can change people's lives so much. Occasionally, I've had a facilitator say to me if I've worked for them or somebody, "Oh, you're changing lives." I'm helping people, in my view, to give them opportunities to make the changes of their own life.
Yes, because they do have their own work many times, don't they? That they have to
It's
continue.
we live in a world of free will and choice,
Yeah.
and that free will and choice can even, the spirit people will turn around and say to you, "We can't help you. We can only help you if you ask." Because the cosmic law of free will and choice doesn't allow them to interfere unless they're invited to. And I think that again strikes people as very strange, very worrying. But it's something you have to live with. We have our own personal responsibility in everything in life. And if we don't take our own personal responsibility, we'll get nowhere, will we?
Definitely. So if you had someone that, so we're talking to the audience here, if someone is thinking about booking a spirit release, but maybe they're a little apprehensive or afraid, what advice would you give to them?
When you're talking about a clearing, if
Yeah,
you're talking about a
clearing.
clearing,
Yeah.
I would turn around and say to people, and then this friend of mine whose house we did, the one where the granddaughter is now being born, said to me, I'm going to book a clearing for me. Not just yet, but she said, because it's for my own personal health and well-being. I said, yes. But I would sit and say to somebody, you do not have to be ill or have a real problem to have a clearing. We all collect rubbish.
Yes,
We all
this is
collect
true.
stuff. We all collect things which we don't really understand, because you can walk into a shop, you don't know how people's lives are treating them in their thing, and you can pick residues of these energies up. You can do, and it can affect you. We're all, I'm not continually, you have to make sure and look after your own personal health, your own personal sovereignty, and all the barriers and the protection. You have to do it. And when we go through things on the earth plane, especially when you're dealing with the restrictions of the earth and our physical vehicle that we travel in, the physical vehicle has restrictions as well. It can't deal with everything. And sometimes it needs an external bit of help. It needs a bit of guidance. It needs a bit of clarity. And if our higher self, or our physical duplicate, our spiritual duplicate, whatever you want to call it, agrees for that clearing to take place, and agrees, because 9 times out of 10, they want it to happen.
Oh,
They want
definitely.
it to be cleared, because it's not
They're like,
within their
thank you.
interest. It's not within their interest to allow them to do that. I'm sure, I know for a fact, there's lots of spirit guides walking around out there shaking their head, thinking, why aren't they listening? Why won't they listen? Because a lot of people don't want to listen, aren't prepared to listen, don't want the truths. But I would say to people, to go back onto your questions, Sandra, is the clearing is important. You have personal responsibility to provide yourself with the most safest and best journey to be able to learn and experience and grow. And if you choose not to, which is your choice, then you have to deal with all the fallout that comes with that, because you want to sit in that maya, in that darkness, if you like, or that shade. I know for a fact that with the different energy changes we've experienced from third energy to 4D to 5D, there are people that would be deemed light workers, that thought processes cannot comprehend the vibrational change, do not understand the changes of energy, and keeps them in a certain zone, keeps them in that time. So it's like people, and this may sound ageist, but I'm old. If you think about it, you'll listen to your children talk, and then they'll listen to their grandparents or you talk, and they'll say, oh, you're stayed, you're stuck in your ways. But we have to grow. It's our responsibility to evolve all the time, to let the light power through us, to allow ourselves to expand, to allow our knowledge to expand, to be more open. I'm being told by my guide sometimes, when he says to people many times, take the blinkers off, open your vision, look at everything. Don't just look like that, because he said you will miss what is it? All right. You will miss the treasures that the universe has placed before you. They're not all in front of you. They are spread all around, which is very true. And those treasures could be experiences. They could be people you meet, life you have, all that. And I just feel blessed enough to be able to provide as much help as possible to people. And yeah, people come and see you for all sorts of things. And it's not, and then they go and say, oh, you do this as well, do you? Well, you might do that. Yeah. Oh, when would you schedule that? I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to schedule your clearing. Why not? Because you might influence it. Oh, right. So
That's a good point.
you have to, it has to be spontaneous, because then it's done without it being any effect whatsoever.
Yeah, I would have to agree on that. Thank you. That was well explained. So now on kind of the same note, but a little different. If someone felt really drawn to train with Spirit Release Academy to do the work that we do, what advice would you give to them?
I would, my advice to them would be to be very mindful of what you're about to start doing. If you're a medium, be very mindful because your response, you're in other people's hands. If you're a trance medium, I would also suggest to the mediums that they need to make sure that the relationship they have with their guides is robust because there's all sorts of stories you hear of people, and I'm sure this is going to be contentious what I'm saying, but when people say, "Oh, I've asked for a new guide to come and do this work with me," now, as you know as well as I do, you have to have a strong relationship with that guide.
Yeah.
Not all guides are used to working through you if you're a trance medium. And if they then go to do this work, it's a different thing. The doorkeeper is there to protect you from rogue entities affecting you or entering your body or working through you. But also, the medium's guides have to learn how to suppress the physical structure of the body to be able to work through it and to be clear and pristine. Because our physical body automatically puts up barriers and says, "No, what's this going on?" Ooh, and will start affecting you. And then you've got people that, so I'm a strong believer in those relationships. Those, and I would also say it to a mental medium as well. Be very mindful what you're doing here because this work, we're working with very strong energies. If you're led to it, great, but just be mindful. You are carrying a very big cross when you do it. And I'm really not trying to frighten people. I'm being honest because that's the only way I work.
That's good.
Sorry?
That's valuable. That's valuable for the honesty because they have to have that development and that relationship, and you can't put the cart before the horse. You have to make sure that everything is strong before you step into this because one of my famous sayings is we're not out here playing tiddlywinks here. This is not your weekend Reiki course. This is like a lifetime,
Absolutely.
life-changing thing that you have to live every day.
And the thing is, if you're not doing it correctly or you haven't got that connection and the connection isn't solid and robust, you then expose yourself and the facilitator to a
And
lot.
potentially the recipient as well.
Absolutely. What you're doing is you're opening the doors up on all areas of Pandora's box to do it. And for the facilitators, I would sit down there and say, you are in control of these clearings. You have to build that relationship with the medium. You have to build that relationship with the medium's guides to know that you are working as a team. It is a team thing. It's not an individual thing. It is a team thing no matter what. And the facilitators have to be very, very aware of if things aren't right with the medium. They
Yes,
have to
they
be
do.
very, very
Yeah.
aware of how to protect the medium by taking control. So the facilitator will probably turn around to who's going to try and say, "Oh, well, I'm just like an administrator." You're not. You are an integral part of how that works. You are in control of everything that takes place. You are managing it really very, very strongly. Um, you also have to have a certain amount of integrity within you to do this work, whether you be a facilitator or a medium.
Hmm.
And I think from a medium's point of view, I think it's very important that the medium thinks more than once about doing this work because there's lots of stories they'll hear through the training. There's lots of things that can, and we have to understand that it sounds like a Star Wars thing now. The dark side is there, but you
And they're
have to
always looking for a way in to
absolutely.
stop the work and to all they have to do is put up a fuss enough for you to either decide that it's, not worth the trouble or they can try to put wedges in between you, your family, your coworkers. So yeah,
Absolutely.
you have to be vigilant, don't you?
You have to understand that the, the dark, if you like, let's use the dark side, will always affect and find the cracks. And we all have cracks.
Mm-hmm.
We all
Yes.
fundamentally, I'm very blessed that I tend to be not attacked very often. Occasionally, I do. But I think I normally find it's at a vulnerable time in my life at the time, or if I've got things going on that you're juggling so many balls, if you like, and you're putting
Mm-hmm.
all the protection and the boundaries in place, and someone might say something to you that is either in your daily life, your family, and you take the eye off the ball slightly because we're human beings at the end of the day, we make mistakes. Anybody that sits down there and says to me, I never make mistakes, they really have got to really think and seriously think about what they do with their life because A, they're not thinking, and B, they're being very naive. Um, because it's important to make sure that you, your family, and everything are right. It's we all have the gift of responsibility to be able to stand in our own sovereignty. And I think the more I've done this work, the more I even see that even more. And I thought I'd been dipped in the pot so many different times with so many different things with over the 40 years that I thought I probably you could say that this old adage, I've forgotten more than I know, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
But you haven't and you just work with it and you are always learning. And I always say to people, you learn something from everybody. Even when I've been to churches, and I haven't been to the churches, spiritualist churches for years, but I used to sit in the congregation and people you could see wanting messages. But I found I got more from other people's messages than I did if I had one, because there is always something that somebody will say that has been said to you for a reason. It depends whether you acknowledge it, you understand it, and it resonates with you at the time. Because depending on where you are in your life, it will either click or it won't. If it doesn't click, it will come around again at some stage.
Yes. Always learning. It's never a dull moment around here for sure. We're always picking up on something new.
Absolutely.
For sure. So, is there anything that you would like to impart, any wisdom? We're very fortunate to have your all of your different experience that you impart to all of us. And so share with our listeners if there's anything that you feel like just the wider public should know.
First of all, I'm not a panacea. I've just I've just been around for a long time.
Hey, there's wisdom in experiences.
Well, absolutely. All I would sit and say to people is you have to be honest with yourself. You have to actually believe in you and believe that you can be empowered to do the right thing. Whether it's this, you need to really make sure that you're fortified within yourself to do it. And I think a lot of people that come into this have experienced traumas, have experienced hard times, bad times. Um, I think you need to have a lot of life experience to do this work. I think it helps. It also shows your empathy and compassion. And I think the most important aspect is ego has no base here.
Yes, good point.
Fear has no base here. You are working in the light. You need to stand in the light if you're going to do this. And be prepared to be surrounded by moths, I think, that are drawn to the light.
Hmm.
However, it is fundamentally that this is not an ego-driven thing. This is not a thing which you can allow fear to fuel you. You have to be quite resilient. You have to be strong in what you do. You have to believe in what you do. And it has to come from your heart because everything here is on a level of love. It's unconditional love. It is that powerful element from within where you've got your heart and the heart chalice. They say the heart still lasts after the brain is gone. So your heart and your heart chalice are far better, and I use the word sat nav, for you to find your way. If in doubt, put your hand on your heart and ask the question, is it true or is it not? Do I do this or not? It knows you better than you know yourself. And it will always it's a repository of lots of knowledge and understanding. We all carry this within us. It's purely how you want to carry it forward, how you want to show people. And you're always going to get people that don't want to know. Don't cast your pearls in front of people who aren't prepared to listen. It's choice. It's help. But also those people that want to learn, be genuine about learning. Be genuine and open. Don't be restricted in their vision. There's a lot of spurious stories go on out there about you do this or you do that or you have to do this. Years and years ago, when I was in the Spiritist churches, I can remember somebody who was a healer saying, "Oh, you always put a glass of water by your bed at night, and then all the bad negative energy will seep out of you and into the water." What a load of hogwash! Because you can feel it on the top of the glass when you see it. You know, it's dust in the atmosphere. It's old stories. There's a lot of old stories which are not right. And as spirit people say, we have developed over many, many years. We are learning how to use the physical being much better than we have done before. We are working to do this. They want to bring the light. They want to bring the healing energy. They want to bring the love. They want to see humankind find its way. But when you live in a world that has got Instagram, TikTok, and all
Oh,
the stuff, and it's instant,
yeah.
and Facebook, and all these things, you sit there and you think, no, it doesn't help you. We do not live in an instant. We live in an instant world, but we shouldn't do. We have to be honest with our world and our life and our light. That's the only way it goes forward. So sorry to go on a bit, but
So simple, but so effective. Yes. The heart. Always come back to the heart.
very much so.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Robert. It's been such a pleasure having you here. Tell the folks where they can find you if they want to connect and find out other things that you might do or to even book a spirit release with you.
Well, you can pick me up on Instagram, says he, just knocking Instagram. On Instagram,
It has its purposes.
at Mind Miracles. My website is mind_miracles.co.uk. It's on the SRA website as well.
And I'll put
So
it in the description too,
on the
so people can.
practitioners page. And what some of the other things I do, I'm an NLP practitioner, a life coach, a spiritualist life coach, a Reiki master teacher, and a Rahani teacher practitioner. So quite multifaceted. The spirit release is something which is very important to me, as is the mediumship, because I believe, as it says on My Miracles, empowerment. And there's also a blog on there as well. And there's some
Nice.
testimonials, which on the spirit release page, which might help and give people a bit of guidance.
That is cool. So you guys go check out Robert and find out some more wisdom and some more experiences and all the cool stuff that he has to offer. Thank you so much, Robert, for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's really nice. You take care.